Horse racing and why it's bad or whatever. Yeah, let's go.
They're off.
Horse racing is a cool and really interesting sport. Although it's definitely died down in the past few years, it's still something that's widely broadcasted all over the world, pulling in lots of money. And the problem with it isn't really the sport itself, it's more about the industry and the corruption within it, which many argue doesn't exist, but I promise you it's very, very real. The amount of animal cruelty in the sport alone is just absolutely insane. I mean, these animals are literally doped up, abused, and on so many drugs before they're even peak maturity, which is often one of the most overlooked parts about the argument of cruelty. These horses don't even reach maturity until 6, and you start breaking them at the ages of 1 to 2. And outright racing them in huge races, non-stop, injury after injury, when they're only 3 years old. I don't really think that you need much of an explanation on why this is horrible, but here's a picture of all the bones that don't even develop until certain ages. Here are just some of the drugs that they use on these horses, by the way. And according to PETA research, these drugs are really just used so that these horses can suppress their pain, which in the end just leads to even further development of the injuries they already have. And that just leads to them ending up breaking a bone or dying because they have a broken bone on the literal racetrack because a horse just can't survive with a broken leg. And part of the time, they don't even die because of injuries or crashes, but they will literally drop dead because their bodies just give up with all the drugs that they're on. And the exploitation just doesn't stop at the horses. It continues to the jockeys and the people that work within the industry too. There's thousands of jockey-related injuries a year, but also around 2 deaths annually. And on top of that, whether you're an amateur, a professional, or just an exercise rider, you basically get zero sort of insurance, even though your life is literally at line no matter what you're doing around these animals. My mother's been around horses literally all of her life, and she was an exercise rider for some of the best horses for literal years, but still ended up with her face kicked in and all of her teeth missing, all because of her own trainer, which in the end she received zero compensation for. The people that are supposed to care about their employees don't, because there's zero regulations in the US. So there's basically zero policies that owners or trainers have to follow when it comes to their workers or their horses. And believe it or not, the corruption goes deeper. One huge thing about the sport is that it's easily dying, especially in America, but racetracks are still popped up by tax-funded incentives or casinos, which I personally believe to be a huge waste of money, especially when you know what's going on in the racetracks. And the funniest part is that instead of the industry trying to implant something to make the sport more entertaining or to even improve it, they just double down by spending more of their money on the exploitive practices. Lots of people argue for horse racing because of all the jobs it gives and the love that goes into the sport. And to that, I completely agree. But I don't think that just gets rid of the problems that are within the industry, and that for the sport to really continue, we need to modernize it and fix the problems that it has. Horse racing is definitely super marketed as noble and extravagant, and yet it has this really deep and dark underside to it, and just has so much wasted money being poured into it. And if there isn't change, I don't think that there will be any horse racing within the next 20 years. So I think that it's really important that people really go out and call for a change, or at least try and fight for a better industry, because it really has been a part of human history for thousands of years. There's definitely good that comes out of the sport and benefits, especially for the horses. But if we don't change, then there's just zero point in continuing to have it around. And I definitely think that it's an issue that deserves more attention than it ever gets. In the end, that's just my take, and thank you, and here are my sources.